Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode, the second ever episode of the Ethernet Community Hockey's NHL weekly show for October 1st, the first week, official week of the preseason, as well as the first week where we're going to get a glimpse at what the show really is going to be about every single week here on the NHL Weekly. Saturday, the October 1st. We're in October already, which I think is really crazy. I don't really know where the year went so far, but we're trucking through I believe we're 10 days away. Yep, 10 days away from the start of the actual season for 2022-2023. With some surprising results from the first week of the week that was the preseason. So, like I said, we're going to get a little bit more of a better feel of how the show is going to run week by week for us here on the EnCHockey channel NHL Weekly show every week. We've got our stats for the teams. We got our stats for the players. It's going to be a little bit more, not dumbed down, as you would say, for the preseason because really what we're going to be looking at mostly is the 1 through 32 standings between all 32 teams. We're not going to be looking at divisions or the wild card positions and all that kind of stuff, or like the past 10 win-loss records and all that stuff. Like, you know, the point values from 1 to 32 from all 32 teams is all we're going to be looking at for the teams wise. For the players, we're going to be looking at points, goals, and assists, I believe, as well as, and we're going to get into it right away, the news. Now, as I said last week, the news is not going to, at least at the beginning, is not going to be like the focal point of the show. It's not going to be like news with a sprinkling of statistics. It's really going to be, what do I think is like the big talking points of the week that was, as well as everything that I think is important to talk about. If there is a little bit of a discussion that is to be had, then we are going to have it, like today. Gonna give my thoughts on two major things that happened, two major talking points in the week that was this last week. First bit of news, the Leafs win the first game of the preseason, kicking off last Saturday, as well as I believe it was Montreal that they beat in that first game. I mean, Montreal is looking pretty impressive. I'm looking right now at where Montreal is at. They're 31st. They have not got a single point yet. They're 0-3-0 right now, but they are looking really good. Their first round draft pick is looking great. I have been watching as many games as I can right now, because ESPN is not really covering as many games for the preseason as they would the regular season, and as well being in the Michigan area. The Detroit games, unfortunately for me, are blocked in my area. So maybe at some point I get sponsored by a VPN where I can watch those Detroit games and cheer on my team. But going back to the news, the two things that we're going to be talking about today: injuries, and because of all of the injuries that are coming out of these preseason preseason, I wrote down postseason and corrected myself. Preseason games is the preseason debate. Is it too long? A lot of people are saying yes, it is. One of the major talking points being all of the injuries that are coming out of the games that are being played. Now, my point of view is this: you're never going to be able to completely 100% avoid injuries or say to anybody, yes, nobody is going to get hurt, whether it's 2 preseason games, 5 preseason games, or 10 preseason games. I would have to double check to see how many games some of these teams are going to be playing. But for this first week, we had one team play 5 games and everybody else playing between 4 and 3 games. And then we have 44 games between 1st of October today, with the matinee between Philadelphia and Boston starting at 1. There's another matinee game starting at 1, I believe. And then through October 7th, this coming Friday, we have 44 games split between 32 teams. That doesn't really sound like a whole lot. There's 110, I believe I counted, preseason games altogether. Split that between 32 teams. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's still a lot more than a lot of people are saying is necessary. You have camp, which shows an awful lot, but for me personally, if I'm a coach, if I'm a GM, if I'm even part of the team, I mean, if you look at all the teams that aren't playing people, Matthews, I don't believe has played yet. I don't think. I mean, look at all the people at the top of the page there. How many of those 10 people, other than Zegras, who is somebody that we're going to talk about in a second, have been playing these preseason games? Not a lot of them. It's because they're trying to figure out who the bottom half of their team is going to be. Not bottom half as in those people are worse than them. It's that every team has their top 5 or top 6 players, and then they have their bottom 6 players. That's how it works. And you're not going to be able to fill those roster positions based solely on Red Wings versus Red Wings prospect games. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need to have those preseason games in order to figure out, okay, who is truly ready to play at the actual I'd say one step below the NHL level. The NHL level is these people at the top playing each other every night. No offense to people that aren't the people at the top of this page, but there are an awful lot of people that are saying that this preseason needs to be shorter. I'm not here to say that I don't think that the preseason is necessary or anything like that. The preseason is very necessary. I'm also not going to say that we need to make it longer by any means, or that it has to actually be this long. What I'm going to say is that there are definitely tweaks that we could make to make it clear to teams who is NHL ready and who is not, which is really the most important part of the NHL preseason. Like, the points, the standings that we're going to be looking at, none of that actually matters. It's going to show us a little bit of a sneak peek at what these lower level players are going to do during the NHL season. But again, especially if you have like two split squad games, like San Jose played 2 games last night at the exact same time against 2 different teams. I believe it was San Jose. They lost one game like 5-1 and won the other game like 7-2. So it's like who was playing on each of those teams. You'd have to look into that. I could look into that. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that is necessary to look at in order to really truly be able to say yes or no to shorten, elongate, completely nix preseason. Never ever nix the preseason. That's my only thing. And then injuries, obviously, I said we talk about Zegras being the most egregious, I believe, of all of them. There's people that are getting injured during camp. Tavares got injured during camp. There's other high-profile people that are going to be out for a little while because of injuries during camp, during scrimmages and all that kind of stuff. But Zegras being probably what I would describe to be the most high-profile injury currently, as we're talking preseason games specifically. Now, Anaheim doing pretty decently. They're in 6th, as we're going to look in a second. They're 6th with 6 points. They've played 4 games. They're 3-1. With I don't believe anybody... No, and nobody in the top 4 goals, assists, or points or anything. They're not moving the needle in a crazy way when it comes to individual efforts, but they are doing a pretty decent job as a team. now we are going to move over to our first slide in the NHL, in the stats standing portion of this. Hopefully everything is big enough for people to see. If it's not, I can make some adjustments for next week. But first, this week we're going to be looking at the NHL standings, and then we'll go into those sorry about that, into the individual efforts. So as you can see right at the top, we have St. Louis Blues, 4 wins, no losses. They are undefeated so far in the preseason. Not really shocking. They have always come out the gate strong most seasons. Anyways, for me, the surprise is San Jose with a 4-1. But they have also played the most games so far, so we shall see by next week when everything starts to equal out a little bit more. As you can see, the highest ranked at playing only 2 games is Carolina. 2 games, no losses. They are also technically undefeated. Washington 2-0 with 1 shootout loss. Now, a lot of these games are finishing in regulation, but then they have a scrimmage shootout or a scrimmage overtime. I'm obviously not counting any of those. It is strictly based on the games that have gone to overtime or shootout, whatever, inside of the official game. None of these games are official. Again, these games are strictly, for my own personal understanding, is that these games are strictly to find out who is going to be playing on your team. Like I said, we're going to move over a slide so that I can show you what I'm talking about here with Montreal. Montreal, there's no question that they've struggled to win. They're 0-3 so far, but that does not mean that their entire season is a loss, that the preseason is a failure or anything like that. It just means that Montreal has not been winning points wise or scoreboard wise. I personally think with their first round draft pick that has been showing up in a lot of huge ways, Suzuki doing a great job as captain and all of that other stuff. They are looking really promising, and the best way that I can show you that the preseason truly does not matter when it comes to standings wise, look who's at the bottom. Look who's at the bottom. I mean, the 18th place tied for what would that be? 17th place with LA and Vegas is Colorado with only 3 points. Colorado 1-2-1 with 4 games played, and then Tampa Bay, as I pointed out, at 32nd. They're also 0-3-0. Arizona with 1 overtime sudden death loss or overtime shootout loss ahead of Montreal and Tampa Bay, and then you have the New York Islanders who have only played 2 games. They're 0-2-0. The Tampa Bay Lightning is going to be 32nd. Does that sound correct to you? I mean, if you're looking at this and you see Montreal at the bottom, or you see Arizona at the bottom, Ottawa Senators at the bottom, whoever, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, so that checks out. Tampa Bay being at the bottom, the Islanders even being at the bottom, that doesn't necessarily make any sense. Pittsburgh is at the bottom, 26th out of 32 teams. None of this truly matters in a true NHL standing standpoint. But for us here, it's just fun statistics to look at. These next 3 slides is really what is going to show the coaches, show the GMs, to show the other players, the top 6 players, and I mean one of the top 6, or arguably a couple of the top 6 in this first one, depending on what the teams do. I mean, you're looking at Malgin and Robertson from Toronto. Who's not honestly right now saying that those guys couldn't be coming in and out of the top 6 throughout the season? Robertson specifically, I've I've been watching quite a bit of the Canadian teams because the ESPN really, really loves showing me exclusively the Canadian teams that are playing right now. I don't know what that's about, but I've been watching plenty of the Ottawa Senators and Toronto and the Canadians specifically. Like that, I've been watching a lot of those games. I know the Boston-Philadelphia game will be on ESPN, and I will be watching that one. So that's going to be a fun, hopefully hard-hitting one. I saw Tortorella was not at ice level the other day. He was in the box watching from overhead. And if you guys, I'm just going to pause for 1 second and technical standpoint say, my screen is right here. So when my camera is here, my screen is right here. So if ever I'm looking over to the sides because I haven't gotten used to looking at the one that's the screen that's in front of me that has the same stats, it's a little bit smaller here, it's massive over here. So if you ever see me looking over here, it's not because I'm distracted by anything, it's because I'm looking at the exact same stats that you are on the screen. But anyways, so goals. We've got plenty of people in here who I have never heard of before, so if I screw up their names, I am so sorry. You also have to remember I am an American boy reading off names of people who are definitely not American, who have very not American names. You've got Brown, you've got Eichel, Jeannot, Malgin, Robertson. This first kid, Nhl Gushin, definitely been gushing with goals, am I right? 4 goals so far, and as the preseason goes on, we're obviously going to be mounting this up. But this is stuff that is going to be interesting. I'm going to be tracking the top 10 of the goals, assists, and points. So hopefully we can start to keep track more on like I showed you guys in the first video, the statistical analysis that I'm doing for the teams themselves. I'm really hoping that I can start to keep track of that for the players as well, so that we get a full view of everything throughout the season. I can look back and I can say Nhl Gushin at the top the first week of the preseason. Who's to say he's not going to be at the top at the end of the final game of the actual season itself? Nobody knows at this point. Somebody that I do believe is definitely going to be at the top of the top 10 at the end of the regular season is Jack Eichel, tied for second with Logan Brown, Jeannot, Malgin, who I keep thinking is Malkin. Not Malkin, it's Malgin, Dennis Malgin, and Nicholas Robertson all tied for second. That's why we only see 6 right now. I also put in their position and their team. The position is something that's really interesting when we go on to the next slide, because we have 3 defensemen in the assist category, which really happy to see just because parity. I really enjoy seeing when the defensemen are given a little bit of credit. Like, defensemen traditionally are not people that are getting a whole lot of credit for producing during games. They're the people that are obviously blocking shots. They're the people getting the puck out of the zone. They're the people that are doing the nitty-gritty stuff in the defensive zone. They are defensemen after all, but we also have to remember that a lot of these guys, the offensive defensemen, are doing a really great job, especially Dylan Colin, Mark Giordano, obviously, and then Zach Whitecloud with Las Vegas, really doing well. Whitecloud, I believe, a young guy, doing really, really well right now. We also have 2 right wings, and everybody else is a center. So we got Timo Meier at the top there. Meier, not spelled the way we would spell Meier here in Michigan or in Wisconsin or the other states that connect to us. We got Duchesne, and then Grimaldi, Hurdle, and Pitlick, Tyler Pitlick, all tied with in third with 4 points. As you can see, Toronto's doing pretty well with, they had Robertson and Malgin, and now they have Giordano in there. I keep forgetting Giordano's on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Something that I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to. Hopefully I can get a little more used to it as he warms up with the team a little bit more. I know he was on the team for the back half of last season, but not something like, obviously when it happened I was like, holy crap, he's on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then I completely forgot about it. Giordano and like Giroux obviously, and then like everybody else is moving around. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting season to pay attention to. I know Kane and Taves are, especially Patrick Kane of the Blackhawks, is in a huge talk to be moved. I would assume nobody really knows where he's going, because I don't really know if those talks are happening outside of closed doors right now. I know Kane is probably not too happy to hear that they are in the middle of at the start of a rebuild after the amount of success that they had in the 2010s. But everybody, San Jose is looking really good. Nashville is looking really good. And when we add the goals and assists together, we get the points. We've got Duchesne, Meyer, and Gushin. And then we've also got Jeannot, Jost, and Malgin. A lot of the people in the top 10 for points, obviously, centers, but we also have the wings as well. Nashville with 2, San Jose with 2, Minnesota and Toronto with 1 apiece. Obviously, Toronto doing pretty well outside of this top 6 here. It's just that a lot of people were tied for 4th. So you will, if there is more than I can fit in here that are tied for the bottom couple, they're not going to be in here. So hopefully that parity thing will be coming in next week, and we'll get a couple more people breaking off from the tied for 4th or tied for 3rd or tied for 1st, as a lot of people can tell right now, because a goalie can have a really, really great first period and then be taken out because they need somebody else to have the time to be able to show off a little bit. So a lot of goalies are perfect right now. So hopefully as the second week comes in, we can start to put some goalie stats in here. So I believe that is it for the stats portion of this. So we're going to go back to this. As I said, 44 games between October 1st today and the 7th, which is Friday of next week. That is our 7-day period. 7-day period between Saturday and Friday that I get this stuff done after the very last game on Friday and before the very first game on Saturday, which is always difficult because Saturdays usually have matinees that start at 1. So today, this is being recorded before 1 o'clock, before the Philadelphia-Boston and the other game that I keep forgetting about because it's not on ESPN. But yeah, so hopefully we can start to, like I said, get a little bit more of that parity going. One thing that I think I might put together for next week is, at the very least, seeing how everybody's doing in their own division. I know a lot of the Canadian teams are playing each other right now, so it's not necessarily playing inside of their own division and kind of stuff like that. I know Toronto and Detroit are playing two games, I believe 2 games. At the tail end of the preseason, but I'm going to try my best to make sure that I'm covering all 32 teams as are relevant. I'm obviously not going to list off every single of the 32 teams in order from first to 32nd. If people want that, put it in the comments And I can certainly do that. I just think that it would take a little bit too much time, especially when we get to the regular season and we start looking at the division standings and the wild card standings, the season league standings, and then the game by game stats, as well as the point totals and all that kind of stuff, and then adding in the scoring and goaltending aspect of all of that stuff. And I don't want this to be a show that is too long. I want people to be able to sit down on a Saturday afternoon before the first game, or during intermission of the first game, or whatever, be able to sit down and just kind of see the week previous and get a preview of the week to come. So this coming week, look out for anybody that you deem to be interesting. I'm certainly going to be looking more into whoever is on ESPN. And not only whoever's on ESPN, but whoever's on ESPN that is not Detroit, and anybody that Detroit's playing, because I can't watch those games. At some point, hopefully, I'll be able to afford to be able to watch those Detroit games out of necessity, also out of want. I want to be able to watch those games that isn't on NHL 66. But hopefully we'll get there at some point in the future. But for now, that is all I have for you guys today. Again, I will say 44 games this coming week. We had... glitch in the system. We had... Darn it. Where'd it go? We had St. Louis at the top with 8 points, 4-0 so far. Tampa Bay at the bottom, 0-3. Yeah, and that is all for now. Like, share, and subscribe if this is for your first time coming across the channel here for Ethernet Community Hockey, NHL Weekly. I will see you again soon. Or not. You're seeing me right now. I'm going to get better at this, I promise.